Most people don't suddenly lose themselves. There isn't a dramatic moment where everything collapses. No loud breakdown. No obvious warning. Instead, something much quieter happens. They slowly fall asleep inside their own life, not physically, but mentally, emotionally. Day by day, life becomes more routine. You wake up, you check your phone, you move through the same tasks, you answer the same messages, you follow the same schedule, and before you even notice it, another day is gone. Then another, then another. From the outside, everything still looks normal. You're responsible, you're productive, you're doing what you're supposed to do. But inside that routine, something subtle begins to fade. Your attention, the feeling of actually being present inside your own life. Because the strange thing about autopilot is that it doesn't feel wrong. It feels efficient, comfortable, predictable. Your brain loves that. The human brain is designed to automate patterns. Once something becomes familiar, the brain stops paying full attention to it, driving the same road every day, doing the same tasks at work, scrolling the same apps before bed. Your mind begins running those patterns without you, which saves energy, but it also creates something dangerous. Your life continues moving forward, while your awareness slowly falls behind. You're still there, but not fully. Moments pass without being noticed. Conversations happen without being deeply heard. Days disappear without leaving much memory behind. And the most unsettling part is this. Many people don't realize this is happening at all. Years can pass this way, living, working, functioning, but not fully experiencing their own life, which raises a question most people rarely stop to ask. If your life has been moving on autopilot, how would you even know? And that question is more difficult than it first appears. Because autopilot is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't interrupt your life with obvious alarms. In fact, it often feels completely normal. You wake up, you follow the same routine. You move through the day responding to what needs attention. Emails, messages, tasks, deadlines. Your mind jumps from one responsibility to the next. And because you're busy, it feels like you are engaged with life. But busyness and awareness are not the same thing. A person can be incredibly busy while barely noticing their own life unfolding. Think about how often this happens. You drive somewhere and suddenly realize you don't remember the drive. Your hands moved. Your eyes followed the road, but your attention was somewhere else entirely. Or you open your phone for a quick moment, and 20 minutes disappear without you noticing. Your thumb keeps scrolling. Your eyes keep moving, but your mind is barely present. These moments seem small, but they reveal something important. Your brain is incredibly good at running patterns without conscious awareness. It does this to save energy. If every action required full attention, the mind would become exhausted very quickly. So it automates behavior, habits, routines, daily decisions. Most of the time, this ability is helpful. It allows you to function efficiently. But when too much of life becomes automatic, something subtle begins to disappear. Presence, the experience of actually being inside the moment. Instead of choosing your attention begins choosing you. Notifications pull it. Algorithms guide it. Responsibilities claim it. And slowly, life becomes a series of reactions rather than conscious experiences. The mind keeps moving, but awareness becomes thinner, which leads to an uncomfortable possibility. What if the reason life sometimes feels empty is not because nothing is happening, but because you're rarely fully there when it does? To understand why this happens, you first need to understand something about how the human brain works. Your brain is constantly trying to conserve energy. Thinking deeply requires effort. Paying attention requires effort. Making decisions requires effort. And if your brain had to do those things for every single action you take, you would become exhausted very quickly. So the brain developed a powerful solution: automation. Once you repeat a behavior enough times, your brain begins turning that behavior into a pattern, something it can run automatically without requiring your full attention. This is why habits form. Driving the same route every day, making the same morning coffee, checking your phone in the same way. After enough repetition, your brain starts running these actions without asking for conscious permission. And most of the time, this is incredibly helpful. You don't have to think about every small decision. You don't have to relearn the same behaviors every day. Your brain handles them efficiently in the background. But there is another side to this system. The more patterns your brain automates, the less conscious attention your life requires. And when too much of life becomes automatic, something subtle begins to happen. Your days start blending together. Moments pass without leaving strong memories. Conversations feel shorter. Experiences feel flatter. Not because nothing is happening, but because your awareness is no longer fully engaged. Think about how many moments of your life have likely passed this way. Walking somewhere while thinking about something else. Listening to someone while planning what you will say next. Eating a meal while staring at a screen. Your body is there. Your eyes are open, but your mind is somewhere else entirely. This is what autopilot looks like. Not dramatic, just quiet absence. And modern life has quietly made this pattern more powerful than ever. Because the systems surrounding you today are designed to keep your brain in automatic mode. Every notification interrupts your attention. Every scroll feeds the next stimulus. Every algorithm learns how to guide your focus, which means your attention is constantly being directed outward, pulled toward the next signal, the next piece of information, the next thing demanding your reaction. And the brain adapts quickly to that environment. It learns to expect stimulation. It learns to search for the next update, the next message, the next distraction. Over time, this constant movement trains the mind to remain reactive. Instead of choosing where attention goes, attention becomes something the environment controls. And when that pattern repeats every day, the mind gradually becomes less aware of the present moment. Not because awareness disappears, but because it becomes scattered, thin, pulled in too many directions at once, which creates an interesting paradox. You can be connected to the entire world through your devices, while feeling strangely disconnected from your own life. Information flows constantly. Updates appear instantly. You know what is happening everywhere. Yet the direct experience of your own day can begin to feel distant, muted, almost like watching your life from slightly outside of it. Many people notice this feeling during quiet moments. Driving home after work, sitting alone late at night, closing the laptop after a long day, and suddenly, there is a brief moment of clarity. A strange question appears. How did the day pass so quickly? You were busy. You were active. You were responding to responsibilities. But the day itself somehow slipped by unnoticed. Then the next day begins. And the same pattern repeats. More messages, more tasks, more notifications, more small demands on your attention, each one harmless by itself. But together, they create a rhythm where your mind is always responding, always reacting, always moving, but rarely pausing long enough to actually experience life as it unfolds. And this is where autopilot becomes dangerous, not because routines are bad, not because habits are harmful, but because when awareness disappears for long enough, life begins happening around you instead of through you. You continue functioning, you continue progressing, but the deeper feeling of being present inside your own existence becomes harder to access, which leads to a quiet realization. Many people today are not unhappy because their lives are terrible. They are unhappy because they are rarely fully inside them. Life keeps moving, but awareness keeps drifting. And when awareness drifts long enough, a person can slowly begin to feel like a stranger inside their own life. If autopilot is a natural function of the brain, then the real question becomes this: why does it feel so much stronger today? Why do so many people feel like life is happening while they're barely inside it? The answer is not only in the brain, it's also in the environment surrounding it. Modern life has created the perfect conditions for autopilot to take over, because almost everything around you is designed to capture and redirect your attention. Think about how often your focus gets interrupted in a single day. You open your laptop to start working. A notification appears. A message arrives. An email demands a response. Before you realize it, your attention has already moved somewhere else. Then, something else appears. Another alert, another piece of information, another small demand for your mind to process. Each one takes only a few seconds, but those seconds accumulate. Your attention keeps shifting, from task to task, from screen to screen, from thought to thought. And every time your attention shifts suddenly, your brain has to reset. It has to reorient itself, refocus, rebuild concentration. That process requires mental energy. Now imagine repeating that cycle dozens of times a day. Your brain never stays in one place long enough to fully settle. It just keeps reacting, moving, adjusting, responding. This constant reactivity trains the brain to expect interruption. Over time, the mind becomes restless, even in moments where nothing is happening. You sit quietly for a moment, and almost immediately, your hand reaches for your phone, not because something important is waiting, but because your brain has learned to search for stimulation. Silence begins to feel unfamiliar. Stillness begins to feel uncomfortable. And the moment attention stops moving, the mind looks for something new to grab, something to read, something to watch, something to check, which means the brain rarely receives one of the things it needs most: uninterrupted presence, the space where attention stays still long enough to fully experience a moment. Without that space, life begins to feel flatter. Conversations become background noise. Experiences blur together. Even meaningful moments pass quickly because attention is already moving toward the next thing. And modern systems quietly reinforce this pattern. Social media platforms reward speed. Content moves fast. Endless feeds, endless updates, endless scrolling. Your brain receives constant novelty. But novelty has a strange side effect. The more novelty your brain consumes, the harder it becomes to appreciate ordinary moments. Simple experiences begin to feel less stimulating. Reading quietly, walking without music, sitting without distraction. These moments once felt natural, but after years of constant stimulation, they can start feeling strangely empty, which leads people to search for more stimulation, more content, more input, more movement. And slowly, attention becomes addicted to change, to novelty, to motion, which makes stillness even harder to tolerate. But stillness is exactly where awareness returns. When nothing pulls your attention away, your mind begins noticing things again. Your surroundings, your thoughts, your emotions, your life as it is actually unfolding. Without that stillness, awareness remains scattered, pulled outward in dozens of directions. And this is how people gradually fall deeper into autopilot mode, not because they choose it, but because the environment around them makes it easier than awareness. Easier to scroll, easier to react, easier to follow the next signal than to stop and observe what is happening. And the longer this pattern continues, the more unfamiliar awareness becomes. People forget what it feels like to experience a moment fully, to eat a meal without distraction, to walk somewhere without checking their phone, to sit quietly without reaching for something. Not because those experiences disappeared, but because attention rarely stays still long enough to notice them, which is why many people eventually begin feeling disconnected from their own life. Not because life stopped happening, but because awareness slowly drifted away from the moments where life actually exists. The present moment, right now, the only place where experience is real. And when that connection disappears, even a successful life can begin to feel strangely hollow. Not terrible, not unbearable, just slightly distant. Like something important is missing but difficult to name, which leads many people to search for answers in the wrong places. They assume they need a different job, a different city, a different lifestyle, and sometimes change can help. But often, the real issue was never the structure of their life. It was their relationship with attention. Because when attention returns to the present moment, something unexpected begins to happen. Life becomes visible again, not dramatically different, but clearer, richer, more alive. The same day, the same world, but experienced with awareness instead of autopilot. At some point, most people experience a strange moment, a small interruption in the rhythm of their routine. It doesn't happen during chaos. It doesn't happen during busyness. It usually happens during a pause. Maybe you're driving home one evening. The road is familiar. You've taken it hundreds of times. Your hands move the steering wheel automatically. Your eyes follow the road without effort. And suddenly, a strange thought appears. You realize you don't remember the last 10 minutes of the drive. You were there. Your body was there, but your attention wasn't. Or maybe it happens late at night. You open your phone just to check something quickly. One video turns into another, then another. And suddenly you notice the time. 40 minutes have passed. You don't even remember what you were watching. Your thumb kept moving. Your eyes kept scrolling. But your awareness never fully arrived. Moments like these seem small, but they reveal something important. Autopilot isn't just a habit. It's a state of mind, a state where your brain runs familiar patterns while your awareness quietly drifts somewhere else. And most of the time, people don't question it because autopilot is comfortable. It allows life to keep moving without requiring too much effort. But occasionally, something interrupts that pattern. A moment of awareness, a brief realization. You suddenly notice the pattern itself. And when that happens, something powerful occurs. Because awareness does one thing that autopilot cannot tolerate. It interrupts it. The moment you notice the pattern loses control. If you suddenly notice you're scrolling, your hand pauses. If you notice your mind wandering, your attention returns. If you notice you're moving through life without really experiencing it, something inside you wakes up, just slightly, just enough to see what's happening. And that moment is more important than most people realize, because awareness is the doorway out of autopilot. Not force, not discipline, awareness. The simple act of noticing what your attention is doing, where it goes, what it reacts to, what it avoids. When people first begin practicing awareness, they often expect dramatic change. They think they must immediately transform their life, change everything, fix every habit. But awareness doesn't work that way. It begins quietly. You start noticing small things. How often your mind jumps to your phone. How quickly your attention becomes restless. How often you react automatically without choosing anything. At first, this realization can feel uncomfortable. You start seeing patterns you didn't notice before. But that discomfort is actually a sign that awareness is returning. Because when autopilot runs unchecked, you don't question anything. You simply follow the next pattern, the next habit, the next reaction. But once awareness enters the picture, you begin seeing those patterns clearly. And the moment you see a pattern clearly, you are no longer completely controlled by it. The brain can still suggest the habit. The environment can still pull your attention. But now there is a small space, a pause, a moment where you can choose. Not every time, not perfectly, but enough to change the direction of your attention. And attention is where experience begins. Where your attention lives, your life slowly follows. If your attention lives in endless distraction, life begins to feel scattered. If your attention constantly reacts to stimulation, life begins to feel rushed. But when attention begins returning to the present moment, something very different happens. Life slows down, not externally, but internally. Moments become clearer. Conversations become deeper. Experiences become more vivid. Not because the world changed, but because awareness returned to the place where life actually exists. The present moment. And the strange thing is, the moment awareness appears, autopilot begins losing its grip. Not instantly, but gradually. Because once you wake up even slightly, it becomes harder to stay asleep inside your own life. Once people begin noticing autopilot, a new question naturally appears. If awareness interrupts autopilot, how do you keep awareness alive? Not constantly, not perfectly, but often enough to stay connected to your life. The answer is surprisingly simple. Not easy, but simple. It begins with attention. Where your attention lives determines how your life feels. When attention is scattered, life feels rushed. When attention is constantly reacting, life feels overwhelming. But when attention becomes intentional, something inside your experience changes. Moments begin to feel real again. And this shift does not require dramatic changes. It begins with something small. A question. A quiet question you occasionally ask yourself during the day. Where is my attention right now? That question may seem simple, but it does something powerful. It interrupts automatic behavior. Imagine you're scrolling through your phone. Your thumb moves automatically. Your mind follows the next piece of content. Then, suddenly you ask yourself, where's my attention right now? In that moment, awareness returns. Your mind sees the pattern, not judging it, just noticing it. And the moment you notice, something shifts. Your thumb pauses. Your breathing slows slightly. You are no longer completely inside the pattern. You are observing it. That small shift is the beginning of awareness. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." What he meant was simple. Whatever your attention repeatedly focuses on slowly shapes your inner world. If your attention lives in comparison, life begins to feel inadequate. If your attention lives in constant stimulation, life begins to feel restless. But when your attention returns to the present moment, your experience begins to change. You notice things you normally miss. The tone of someone's voice, the quiet feeling of breathing, the way light moves across a room. These details seem small, but they are the texture of life itself, and they only appear when attention is present. The goal is not to eliminate autopilot completely. That would be impossible. Your brain will always automate patterns, and that's not a bad thing. Habits make life efficient. Routines make life manageable. The real shift happens when autopilot is no longer the only mode you live in. When awareness occasionally returns to interrupt the pattern, to observe, to choose. Over time, these small moments of awareness begin reconnecting you with your life. You start noticing when your attention is being pulled too quickly. You notice when your mind feels overwhelmed. You notice when you are reacting instead of choosing. And each time you notice, a small space appears. a space between stimulus and response, a space where attention becomes intentional. This idea has been echoed by philosophers for centuries, not only by Marcus Aurelius, but also by thinkers who understood that human freedom begins with awareness of the mind. When you can see what your attention is doing, you gain the ability to redirect it, and that ability changes something fundamental, because attention is not just a mental process. It is the gateway to your experience of life. Where your attention rests, your life slowly unfolds, which means the simplest mental tool for stepping out of autopilot is also one of the most powerful. Just occasionally ask, where is my attention right now? That single question can quietly bring you back to the only place life actually exists, right here, right now. At some point, almost everyone experiences a moment like this, a quiet pause in the middle of an ordinary day. Nothing dramatic is happening. Nothing is falling apart. Life looks stable, normal, yet something inside you suddenly becomes clear. You realize how long you've been moving through life automatically, following routines, responding to responsibilities, reacting to whatever appears next. And for the first time in a long while, you notice it, the pattern, the speed, the constant motion of attention. That moment can feel strange, almost unsettling, because you start seeing things that were invisible before. How often your attention leaves the present moment. How quickly your mind reaches for stimulation. How easily the day fills itself with reactions instead of choices. But that realization is not something to fear. It is something to welcome. Because the moment you notice autopilot, you are already beginning to wake up. Awareness changes the relationship you have with your life. You stop drifting unconsciously. You start observing. And observation creates space. A small space between you and the patterns that once controlled your attention. Inside that space, something important becomes possible. Choice. Not the kind of choice modern culture usually talks about. Not choosing between more options, more productivity, more goals. A deeper kind of choice. The ability to decide where your attention lives. And where attention lives, life follows. When your attention constantly reacts to the outside world, life begins to feel rushed, fragmented, restless. But when attention becomes intentional, life begins to slow down. Not externally. The world will still move quickly. Responsibilities will still exist. But internally, experience becomes clearer, richer, more alive. Because awareness reconnects you to the only moment where life can actually be experienced. The present moment. This idea is not new. Philosophers have been pointing toward it for thousands of years. The Stoics spoke about observing the mind. Buddhist thinkers describe the practice of awareness. Modern psychology studies attention as one of the most powerful forces shaping experience. Across cultures and centuries, the insight remains the same. Where your attention goes, your life quietly follows. Which means the real danger of autopilot is not routine. It's absence. The slow disappearance of awareness from your own life. Days pass, weeks pass, years pass, and one day a person wakes up wondering where the time went. Not because life didn't happen, but because they were rarely fully present when it did. The good news is that awareness does not require a dramatic transformation. You do not have to abandon your life. You do not have to escape modern society. The shift begins much smaller than that. It begins the moment you notice where your attention is. Again, and again, and again. Each moment of awareness is like briefly waking up from a dream. You see your surroundings more clearly. You hear people more deeply. You feel your own life instead of simply moving through it. Those moments may be small, but over time, they reconnect you with something that autopilot slowly takes away. Presence. The feeling of actually being here inside your own experience. And once you begin waking up in this way, another question naturally appears. If attention has the power to reconnect you with your life, then what kind of life do you want your attention to build? Because the moment you step out of autopilot, the direction of your life is no longer completely automatic. It becomes something you can begin shaping again. And that is where the final step of this journey begins. Not just waking up, but remembering who you were becoming before the world told you who to be.